How you rebuild after a half or full marathon can make or break your next race. And while we should all kick back, relax, and celebrate a race gone right, I know for me personally, I need to nail these 5 things to make sure my next race goes right. Here's the situation. I have about 3 months before I start training for the Vancouver Marathon in May. The obvious thing to do would be some base building, so just ramp up that easy mileage over 12 weeks, and I will be doing that, but there is a small twist, so stay tuned for that. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Eric, I'm a hobbyist runner from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I have aspirations of running in the Boston Marathon. Number 1, bar none, the most important thing I found I can do for my running is to set goals. Short, medium, and long term. I suppose that applies to life in general, but then again, I'm not here to tell you how to run your life. Anyways, Boston is obviously my long-term goal, Vancouver would be that medium term, but what about the short term? Well, I've scheduled a 5 and 10K time trial for myself in December. Whether or not the weather cooperates is another story, so subscribe to see how that turns out. You just might see me run through a snowstorm. You know, in hindsight, that probably wasn't a very interesting twist. It'd probably be more exciting if I decide to do like 60K of cross-country skiing or something, but I digress. So why a 5 and 10K? For the 5K, there is a tradition aspect. When I started running, one of my first intermediate goals was to be able to run a sub 25K, which I would attempt every year at the end of summer or at the start of fall. For the 10K, that's a pretty good benchmark distance for the VDOT calculator, so I know what paces I need to run in the marathon training block. Hey guys, Editing Eric here to provide some clarity on the VDOT calculator. When it comes to the calculator, the more recent your race or time trial result is, the better. You shouldn't be pulling out a PB from 2 to 3 years ago, because in that time you might have gotten more or less fit, you might have gotten injured, whatever it is, that's no longer an accurate representation of your current fitness. Also, the closer in distance that time trial or race result is to your intended distance, the better. So let's say you're aiming for a marathon like I am, then having a recent half marathon would be ideal. But if you don't have that, then a 15 or 10K would be reasonably good. It's when you start getting these lower distances that it gets really hard to extrapolate. Let's say you run a really fast 5 or 3K. That's great, but it doesn't really give you a picture of how far you can extend that speed out. Speed extension is probably one of the harder things to do in running, mainly because it depends on you having a really solid aerobic base, and whether or not your body can handle the workouts it takes to run these calculated paces. And for both distances, they aren't too demanding, so I can recover pretty quickly after the fact. Plus, they make me run pretty ripping fast, which is always fun.
Oh yeah, I can see my ancestors right now. I gotta do this to myself.
Even with an exciting new goal on the horizon, I find the second most important thing to do is to not lose my head. The way this usually manifests is me trying to do too much too soon. Peaking at the right time is a skill and an exercise in discipline. So I am positively not gonna go out and run a session like 15 to 20 by 400 meters at 5 to 3K race pace because I don't hate myself that much, and the fatigue buildup over that 12 weeks would just be too much, and I'll arrive on time trial day pretty flat. That's kind of what runners are talking about when they say leaving the race in training. You train so darn hard that when you get to race day, you got nothing left.
Oh, that did not feel good. Damn.
Anyways, here's my rebuild plan. In the past, this would be a lot of easy miles with a session day and a long run. But this year, I've found that I've been able to bounce back from races a lot faster than I did in the past. So in light of that, I'm adding a couple of new things to my running. The first is 2 sessions a week. Usually I'd alternate on weeks, so week 1 would be a tempo effort, and then week 2 would be an interval session targeting VO2 max. But I am going to be starting off these sessions relatively mild before ramping them up over time. The second new thing will be the presence of steady paced running. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I struggled mightily with this effort band in the previous marathon training block, so this is kind of my way of easing into it so it's not a shock to the system the next time I have to do it. Even though I'm down in the trenches right now, I have to remind myself of the third important thing. For the vast majority of people watching, myself included, I think it bears worth repeating that this is a hobby for us. It's not our profession, so it shouldn't be our whole personalities. And make sure you spend time with family and friends, get stuff done around the house, because I know it's really bloody difficult to do that when you're in the depths of a marathon training block. Because I am starting back up from zero, it's very tempting to just say, well, I'm not running super high mileage right now, so do I even need strength training? The answer is yes. Yes, I really do. I desperately do. If I don't do any strength training at all, that means that specific fitness will go away, which will put me in a very poor position to start a training block, which leads to injury. For perspective, here's the last strength workout before my marathon, and here's the next one. There's kind of a gap there, and granted, it was more important to recover from the marathon during this week, but at the same time, that means I might have detrained just a tiny bit. So now's the time to get back at it. Strength leads to good form leads to injury prevention leads to consistency leads to fitness, which leads to... You know, I don't really know, and I never really thought this far. What's it all for? I'm filming this a few weeks into the block, and during harder efforts, my form is no longer folding over like a lawn chair, so I can say the system is working. And lastly, the most important thing to do is to celebrate your past wins. Even if the race you just ran wasn't a PB or the time you wanted, it still cause for celebration because you were healthy enough to run that distance at all. And if we don't have our health, then what the hell do we have? For myself, I like to put up physical reminders. In my home office, I have the medals for my half and full marathon PBs, as well as the original bibs. And for my work cubicle, it's a similar story. I have certificates of my PB races and photocopies of the bibs to accompany them. And I'll be the first to admit this is a little bit dorky, but it's what works for me. But what about you guys? What do you guys do to commemorate your key races? Also, are you training for anything right now? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you made it this far into the video, consider giving it a like, best way to help out the channel. And as always, thank you so much for watching.